Hi there, I'm Amy.
And I'm Sue.
And we're the mother-daughter duo behind Chatter Matters.
Each week, we're going to be chatting through everyday challenges and how we navigate them as two women from different generations.
So get yourself comfy, grab your cup of tea or coffee, and let us show you why Chatter Matters.
Welcome back to Chatter Matters.
Welcome back to another episode, everyone.
We're excited to chat to you this week because we thought we would talk about school relationships, and there's a reason why we thought we would talk about that.
Well, yeah, because I've just come back from a school reunion, which I feel like I'm very little to be doing a school reunion. I'm still a child.
But yes, your school does at the age of 25, it invites you back.
It does. That was always the school's thing, right? Like it was, you know, when we were starting to think about what we wanted to do post our A-levels, our IB, it was not what do you want to do when you're 18, but think about at 25, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And then make choices based off of that, as opposed to immediately what you want to do right now. So then to tie it all up together, they bring us back together in the summer of the 25th year, which is quite cool.
Well, we'd love to hear more about that, but we thought in terms of why does chatting matter about it? You and I were touching on just the importance of school relationships. It's not an easy time to be finding relationships.
No.
Friendships are such a big thing, aren't they, when you're at school?
And I think the reason why we thought about recording it this time around was I got thrown back into those feelings that I had when I was at school, and just, it's I think it's like, with retrospect, potentially what would we have spoken about differently, or, but also just, that whole piece around how much those relationships at school impact us into our adult lives as well, which I think is quite interesting.
So before we dive into the relationship space, when you were at school thinking about going to what you went to yesterday, what were your thoughts, if you can cast your mind back to then?
I mean, so when I was at school, so my school went all the way up, so I was there from age 7 to 18, so I was there for like nearly all of my childhood, and I remember those 25 reunions feeling so far in the future, like, at 25 you're like a real adult. Like you'll have your life sorted, and you'll know what you're doing, and you'll have, we always were talking about like, oh my God, who's gonna have had kids, and who's gonna have been married, and it's all that moment of like, because 25 was like life will have happened by that point, surely, which is just hilarious to look back to, because it's like, I feel like I've only just started. So I think, retrospectively looking back, I'm like, 25 is so early to have a reunion, because, there are so many people that I know that are still in education, or haven't necessarily started their chosen career yet, or have started in a job and that's not, they don't think that's what they want to do forever, and they want to change. And, it's a really weird time to have a reunion, because you are still in that figuring out phase, which is what your mid-20s are all for.
Yeah. And I was just trying to think. I mean, I never had a school reunion.
Did you not?
No. Well, no, I moved around.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I don't know whether any of the schools that I were at, because my father was in the army, I moved around every sort of 2 or 3 years. I never had a long enough time at a school. But I wonder in my generation whether 25 you would have been settled in a career by then.
Yeah, possibly.
And whether just right now in your context and in your generation it's much more finding out. I think people go on to doing much more on education, whether it's PhDs or masters, or whereas I don't
and also
know
my school was, it was a very academic school as well, like I think proportionally we probably have a lot more academics than your average school, because that's just sort of something that was really encouraged. But it was hilarious just having those conversations, because you do the whole, where are you based, what are you doing, and like catching up with where everyone's at in life. And I'm 95% living in London, which is just, it's one of these things of like, and then, I hardly bump into anyone, you know, but it was so funny talking to different people, being like, oh, I bump into so-and-so all the time. And like how different circles, now that we've stepped out of school, actually still interlink and bump up against each other and that kind of thing, which is quite interesting.
So how were you feeling about going to it? What did it kind of bring up for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I ended up speaking to quite a few people about this yesterday. It was that feeling of, on a non-uniform day, what do I wear? What do I wear so that, you know, like, I look like myself, but I don't look like I'm trying too hard. And like, you know, it's like you're in that catch-22 of like, I don't want to, you know, for me, it was a big thing of like, I don't want to stand out.
And was that how you were when you were at school? I
think so, yeah. Like I hated, I don't enjoy being like the center of attention, or, you know, and like you're so in that, you know, that's the time of your life when you want to fit in, and you want to feel like you belong in a group and you belong somewhere. And so anything that therefore makes you different feels quite anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
And it was like those same feelings came back up again of like, oh my God, I don't know what to wear. And like, that was really stressful the whole week leading up to it. But it's just a symptom of just that anxiety of like, oh my God, am I going to turn up and no one's going to talk to me, or I don't know how to talk to anyone else. You know, like, it's just all of those like that inner child anxiety comes back out again. Which I thought was quite interesting leading up to it, because I'm just naturally quite a confident and chatty person. So those kinds of things shouldn't really, like, if it was at work, I have no problem going to a networking event or chatting to people and making conversation. That doesn't faze me in the slightest. But suddenly, because it's back in the school setting, I'm suddenly feeling nervous about it.
Which is a thing called transference. So when your past is in your present, so you're taking all of the anxious feelings that you had at the age of, I don't know, 12 through to 18.
Yeah.
All of those come rushing back because you're in the same situation with the same people, and all of those anxieties come forward. And it's interesting, just even as an adult, you know, it still catches you in exactly the same way. Because it wasn't just you, was it?
Yeah.
Your friends were also saying
oh my God.
the same.
And it genuinely, like most people that I spoke to, you know, either said it was a bit overwhelming, or that, you know, they were a bit nervous, or they, you know, those, to be honest, those were the two words that were used the most often. And I think that was pretty representative of how lots of people were feeling. Because it is a bit overwhelming to come straight back to those teenage years where you're trying to work everything out with the people that you worked it out in front of, to then suddenly be like, and here's the end product, you know? And it's just, you know, because there are so many people, I think especially with this day and age, and like, you keep in kind of touch of what people are doing because you see it on social media.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't actually necessarily have conversation. You know, there's so many people that I haven't spoke to in the 7 years between when I left school and this, who I was very friendly with when I was at school. And, you know, so that in itself was just so lovely to be able to just touch base with a few people and remember, like, oh, just because I've got a very solid friendship group from school that I'm still very close with and still see quite often. And it's not just those, like, the six of us. Actually, I had so many really lovely friendships and relationships with other people that actually, you know, now that we're adults, do you reconnect? Do you, you know, or is it just when we bump into each other, it's a nice catch up kind of thing.
So let's talk about, because you've got the beauty, having had all of those experiences come up yesterday, you've got the beauty of a 25-year-old now in hindsight thinking about school.
Yeah.
And I mean, you and I have always been very close, and we've always talked about what was going on. But I'm wondering now, with your own hindsight, if you were giving advice to a parent, or I guess giving advice to a parent on how to support their daughter, their son, who because it is such a difficult time in life.
It is. I think the biggest thing that I've walked away with is the narrative that I held as a child wasn't reflective of my reality. So, and by that I mean, I have this narrative of, I didn't find a friendship group until I was 16, and that I therefore didn't really I truly didn't, you know, and that was my lived experience. I didn't feel like I belonged until I was 16, when I found the friendship group that I'm still close with.
And that was because you were, as you say, you were at a relatively academic school, and you were pretty smart. You were also sporty. And
I like, when I was younger, I loved acting and
Yes.
being part of the drama stuff. And I would like to think I was quite kind as well. And so just therefore I would be pretty happy just being friendly with everyone. But yeah, so I didn't necessarily feel like I naturally fit in one group, because at school you do naturally align with people that you like do extracurricular activities with typically, or that you're like in the same class with. And I just never really felt like I had one spot that really worked for me. So therefore I ended up being friends with lots of people, but then never knowing who to sit with at lunch. That would be the best way to describe it, of like I could sit at so many tables, but I never really felt like I belonged at a single one. And so like, for example, lunches always used to be really anxiety inducing for me, because it's that moment of like, oh my god, if I haven't gone to class with someone who I know I can sit with at lunch, where do I don't know where to find people. And then suddenly when I was 16 and I had this friendship group, it's like, oh my god, I know I've got one table in the sixth form cafe that I go to every day, and just the sweet relief of having that.
So it's interesting, isn't it, if you think, parenting somebody whose child, may be broad like you, and your brother was similar as well, could go into lots of different groups. Now as an adult, it's a real gift.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the reason why I brought that up was that, because then there may be people who are similar to me, and I think to your point of like, what I loved yesterday was that I had so many people to catch up with, and that there was someone would walk by and I was like, oh my god, how I heard you're doing this at university, or where are you living now? Oh my god, and it was so nice to be able to catch up with so many people that I've known for so long. But I think the reason why I brought that up around like the whole, because I have this narrative, right? I was like, I didn't have a friendship group until I was 16. But actually looking back on it, I was like, I had so many friends. And I think so my advice therefore to a parent is like, with some of that truth telling that we were talking about in like the self-help episode that we had, which is like just helping your child not get stuck in this singular narrative. And that's how talking will help, is because if you're understanding how your child sees themselves at school, sees their social standing, their social position, will help with a little bit of like, is it true, or is there a way to reframe it? And it doesn't necessarily take away the anxiety of who do I sit with at lunch, but actually, I don't know, I don't know if I'd have done anything differently. And I think sometimes just with school you have to muscle through a little bit. And now I'm really comfortable sitting by myself. But like it's one of those things of like, it's so important to talk about it, because sometimes it will enable you to sense make a bit more in the moment, but equally there is a little bit of, there's only so much you can do by talking, and it doesn't take away that experience and the anxiety.
And maybe that's the lesson for a parent, which is, help broaden out, put some context in place, which is, what a gift you have that you can move around all of these different groups. And I remember also feeling anxious as a parent.
Oh, did you?
Well, yeah, because, of course you don't want your child to be unhappy.
Yeah.
You want them to go to school and feel like they belong and feel like they've got good friends.
Yeah.
And for both you and your brother, I can remember just wishing you had like a best friend.
Yeah.
But also knowing that your capacity to move around lots of people and interact with people from different groups was always going to serve you well. But I'm not sure you would have been able to hear that as a child. I was just going to
say that, because my initial reaction to you saying that was, I kind of wish you'd told me that, but I'm sure you probably did, and I just don't remember it. And it's not, because it goes back to, well, that doesn't help me now.
Yes.
Sure, maybe in 7 years' time, I'm able to have lots of lovely conversations with people, but right now, I feel stressed working out where I go and sit at lunch, and so I think that's I guess what would, given that I obviously have the child's mentality of like what I remember, what were some of the things that you did with me on, because I remember when I first joined the school, right, first week, and I had what was fundamentally a bit of a panic attack going into lunch for the first time, because I come from a tiny little village, where there was maybe 100 pupils in the school, to suddenly there's 100 pupils in my year, and just being so overwhelmed with going into lunch, but like, and so clearly lunch was an issue for me at school. I think we're discovering, but I think it encapsulates that feeling.
Well, it's
so
because
well
when
for
you
me.
all come together and there's no structure, you know, like beyond going and getting
it's
lunch,
that moment from Mean Girls, right, where like suddenly it's like everyone's animals and it's just sort of
well, and also if you watch any of the drama, you know, on TV, it's normally at lunchtime, isn't it, when it all kicks off.
Cafeteria. But so going back to the question of like, what were some of the things that you tried to do with me, and is there anything different potentially that you would do now that we're out of the school system?
I mean, I think I always try to encourage you to not get too focused on just one person.
Yes. Which is a tendency that I have to do as well.
Yeah.
Especially when I was younger, to sort of
find
one person and latch on and be like, okay, they're going to be my everything.
Yeah. So I think always trying to expand you to do that. I mean, I think, you know, I think in hindsight, I probably would not want to get as anxious as I did over it. But actually just for it to be okay that you don't have a best friend.
Yeah.
You know, that what's more important is, are you able to go and talk to lots of different people and make connections with lots of different people, because that will serve you well. But I mean, you know, even now you still get anxious about like, who's my bestie?
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away.
I just don't think I feel it as acutely, because I think that's the difference, right? When you're younger and you're at school, so much of your, like, basically your entire social life is built around those hours in the middle of the day when you're at school, and it feels so, because you're not used to navigating social environments and it's your first time kind of practicing it all, it feels that much more intense.
What is it about us needing to have a bestie? Because I was just reflecting on, I've always like wanted like one person. I just need one person that I feel like I can talk to about it. Well, I'm just curious suddenly now.
I think there's probably something in the steadiness of it, you know, like of knowing you have someone who gets to know every nook and cranny of your personality and your history and your frame of reference, so that you can, you know, like, you know, you've got one safe space, no judgment, to just be, and you don't have to be anyone other than yourself. Whereas I feel like for different social groups, different elements of your personality and different elements of yourself come to the front. Whereas having one single person who's your best friend, you'd hope, sees all parts of you and loves all parts of you. So therefore you don't have to bring one element of your personality to the front or backwards. You just get to be as a whole, would be probably my read of it.
I think my energy thing is, it's like an anchor. Like without it, you feel like you're sort of anchorless, I guess. You know, whereas if you've got like one person that you can come home to effectively, you know, it provides you with a bit of an anchor. Yeah. And I remember, you know, both of you at school probably not having that sense of an until you went into sixth form. Yeah. and then you did, but I don't think your brother ever did.
Well, because I did when I was younger, didn't I? Yeah. You know, like I had a couple of close friendships and those just didn't work out for whatever reason, and and then you are just then sort of swimming a little adrift.
Yes, I think so. So maybe that's what your best friend is just your kind of anchor. Yeah. Your anchor point. Yeah. What else in hindsight, if you know, as you think about your experience with friendships and relationships, what else would you have wanted to have talked to me about that maybe you didn't?
I think I probably wish I just talked about it more. Yeah. You know, I think as a child, right, like you don't know how to sort through your own emotions and like, you know, because you have to be taught how to do that, right? It's not something you're innately born with the ability to do. So I think I kind of wish I'd spoken about it, but there's so much shame attached to it of like,
there's nobody like me, I'm not likeable.
Yeah, exactly. Or like you hear these people, you know, you look at everyone else and you go, well, they seem to be loving. school and thriving, and why don't I feel like I'm, and I'm sure everyone's got their own shit. It doesn't matter how quote unquote popular you are, or if you've got like everyone's will have been feeling some form of stress or anxiety about something. And so I wish I opened up about it a little bit more, so that we could, I think, so if I go back to how do I deal with anxiety now, is I need to put it into context. I need someone to help shine a light on what my thought process is and how does that fit into the bigger context, and do a bit of like fact finding around the outside. And I think I wish I did a little bit more of, okay, yes, I'm feeling anxious, but why am I feeling anxious? Is there anything that I could do to try and solve it? Is there, what do I need to feel more stable and comfortable? And, and I remember, again, feeling a lot easier when I started working as well, when I was 16, because I suddenly had a friendship group there that I was like, okay, every Saturday, I know that I'm going to go there, and I've got lots of people that I got on really well with, and like that felt very anchoring. So it's like, I think there's something for me around, I don't think I knew what I needed at that time. And I think potentially talking about it may have helped me work through it, rather than I just very much had like a muscle through mentality of like, we'll just get to the end of this week and it'll be fine. Get to the end of the day, it'll be fine. Get to the end of lunch, it'll be fine, And
I guess I'm just thinking if I think about coaching myself as a parent, it would be to try and have a little bit more distance on it, because there is it feels, or my experience of listening to both of you talking about not having a friend, not knowing who to sit with, not people being mean, it's so painful as a parent to listen to your child talk about that, and all you want to do is wrap them up in cotton wool and go and fight their fights for them, or go and tell everybody how, gorgeous human being you are. And of course you want to be friends, you go into that massive protective mode. And I think that probably clouds one's ability to support your child with those types of conversations, because I think you get overly emotional and protective and wanting to fix it. When actually it probably doesn't need fixing. It's a life experience. It's all character building, whatever they say. But I think at that stage when you're so little and your little hearts are hurting, just as a parent, your natural instinct is to want to fix.
But I think that's so true, right? Like, I think social dynamics at school are not something that parents can come in and wave a magic wand and sort out for us, especially in your teenage years. I think when you're a bit younger, there's like, you organise play dates and things, there is a bit more manufacturedness to your social experience.
You can orchestrate things.
Exactly. Whereas suddenly when you get to senior school, and it's then kind of up to the kids to determine what happens. I think that's when it does become more complicated for parents, because it's like, how much do you get involved versus let them figure it out? And I think my takeaway for both parents and teens, and it's one of those things that people say to you and you're like, great, that doesn't help me now, but it is that, like, this is only a small part of your story. And I think we're talking about how do you just navigate feeling a bit stressed but anxious. Obviously, if you're being bullied, or like if there's something more serious going on, then I think that also warrants conversation, and it warrants a slightly different approach. But just generally navigating social dynamics, especially in like high school, senior school, I think that is a little bit something that the whole point of it is so that you learn how to navigate social situations in the outside world. And so it's not for the parent to solve, but it's for them to help arm you with the ability to do it effectively. And I do think that you did a good job of that. I 100% do, because I do it very well now. But I do think there is something on, as a parent, like, this isn't a shameful topic to talk about. You're not failing at school if you don't feel like you fit in. That's a really normal experience. And how do you arm your child with the language of the feelings that they're going through, and potentially, well, what if you tried this, or have you spoken to that person, or
Yeah.
what have you like, I think that's something that you always did quite well with me. It's like, oh, you haven't spoken to so and so for a while, or you haven't mentioned, why don't you go and, and it's like, oh, okay, I can just go over and speak to them. Like I think that's where I'm getting to, which is to your point of like, it's not about fixing, but it's about preparing and using this as a playground to build those skills for the outside world.
Yeah, I mean, I got bullied.
I was going to say, we're touching on sort of bullying. That was, how much did you...
I didn't talk to my parents at all. Well, partly because they were, mum was having a really tough time and dad was busy supporting her, and also my sister had just lost her sight. So my parents were kind of absent at that point. It was a very difficult time in our childhood. We'd come back from Germany to live in Aldershot. And I'd gone to a school, and it was halfway through my GCSEs, and it was just, the whole thing was hideous. But I got bullied as soon as I went into that school. Excuse me. And I didn't have anyone to talk about, and I just stopped going to school. Yeah. I mean, my parents, I don't think, knew that I just stopped going to school. And it was also, we were kind of at revision time building up to exams. So, you were like revising at home, you know, but I literally, my last year at school just didn't go because I got bullied so much. And so this is your
final year of GCSE year. So it was like your final year of O levels, wasn't it, at the time?
Exactly. And that was, the sporty girls, were ganging up on me because I actually was quite good at sport. And so then I was pushing one of their friends out. And it was a really difficult time for me as a child. And I didn't have a parent to talk to about it.
Do you think you carry that with you at all?
Oh, I've done so much therapy.
Yeah.
I've done so much therapy work on, that whole year of, being bullied. So, I can talk about it now without it catching me. But it was a difficult time as a child, and not having a parent to really talk to about it meant that I didn't know how to navigate it. So I just removed myself, which obviously then impacts on your own academic qualification, your successes. But I mean, and I have friends now whose children are at school, and they go through bullying, and it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing for your child to be honest, experience.
having this conversation, I hadn't even realised the impact of these kinds of things on the parent, and how much, because I'm coming at it as the child, right? Of like, I felt all these things, and it was horrible. Like, not horrible. I actually had overall a very positive time at school, and I'm very lucky to have had an overall very positive time at school. But there are still things that will come up for you at age 25, and you still feel, and yada yada yada. But I hadn't even realised the impact that it might have on the parent. And I'm sure all parents go through it, because every child will find something at school that they feel stressed about.
Completely. I don't think I've met anyone that went through school unscathed. I think, but to your point, I think it's designed to help you. Prepare you for the world, and of course it gives you academic qualifications, but more than that, it's about how do you create those social interactions, how do you deal with difference, people behaving differently than how you've been brought up. So all of that, is in the mix, which I think it's such, everyone says like, school year is the best years of your life, and I'm not sure they are.
I hate that saying. I fundamentally disagree with it as well. Like, I really, and also just like, if at age 16 that's the best your like life is going to get, no tea, no shade to the people that do say it. However, I would like to think that like as an adult, I've got a better grasp of who I am as a person, and more in, and maybe, there may be other things that go into that, right? Other circumstantial context that means that maybe school was much more positive than the stuff you have to deal with as an adult. But like, I just feel like the way that I would love to remember it is it paving the way for me to live more successfully. And I think, again, like how do you, as someone who didn't have as positive an experience and did experience bullying, like how do you hold school and sort of education in your life?
Not with much
stock.
Power. No, really it was something to get through, and then I could start my life. And I have sort of been self-made, I haven't got academic qualifications. No. Everything I've done is through hard work. So it had no real bearing You know, apart from some of those traumatic experiences, it doesn't.
And so what advice would you give to either maybe a teen who's going through bullying or just hating school, and also kind of for a parent who has a child who's experiencing that, you know, because to your point of like just needing to get through it, but what are the things that you can do whilst you're just getting through it?
I mean, I think, you know, obviously being able to talk to your parents, you know, about it. And if you can't talk to your parents, to find a teacher that you trust, you know, someone that you feel comfortable with, that you can just... Not necessarily that they fix anything, and I think you can ask them. I don't want you to do anything, because back to your point, it's incredibly difficult, because sometimes when you make interventions as an adult, you actually make the situation worse. But I do think chatting about it to someone, aunt, uncle, older babysitter, you know, just somebody just to let people know, so that you're not. So that the shame doesn't just stay inside you, because that's what creates depression and creates other issues, you know, self-harming and, you know, all that.
And I really but before you carry on with that, I do think there's something in there that I think is really important around you're allowed to tell people that you don't want them to do anything with it. Like, you have agency, you have control over what other, you know, like there is a degree of control that you can have of what people do with information that you tell them. And I think that is, even if you are 14 years old, you have the power to be able to say to someone, I'm going to tell you something because I want to get it off my chest and because I trust you. I do not want you to fix this for me. I'm just telling you because I want it off my chest.
And as an adult, you have to respect that.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean that once they told you, you know, you get on the phone and blast out the parent about their child being a bully. Yeah. You know, so I think if your child, there were moments when I think you and your brother would tell me things, and particularly actually was normally around parents' evening. Yeah. You'd be like telling me things about your teacher, and I'm like, I want to have a word with your teacher, and you'd be like, no, please don't. Yeah. Please don't say anything about it. I'm handling it. I'm dealing with it. And I think as a parent, you have to respect your child.
And trust your child as well. There's a bit of like trusting the trust they're putting in you. And not the most eloquent sentence I've ever said in the world, but like, you know, there's an element of, if you do have your child letting you in on this and they say they don't want you to do anything with it, at least for the first few times you've got to respect that and you've got to trust it. If it continues and it looks like potentially physical harm's being done, or you're really concerned about mental state, then we're in a different conversation, right? But it's those first few bits of confiding where like that trust, in order that they continue to do that, it's so important you respect the wishes of what they've asked from you.
And I think your role as a parent is to try and help your child help themselves,
because that you're never always going to be there to solve all their problems for them, and that's not helpful.
And they need the skills, you know, to learn from. So I think that probably would be the bit. I have one last question for you. You know, you were saying about the kind of stories that you hold as a child, and then yesterday some of those kind of came up for you again. What do you need to let go of? What narrative do you need to let go of that you could just kind of draw a line under school years and actually liberate yourself forward?
This is going to catch me. I can feel it catching me. Because it fundamentally is I'm not lovable, you know, like I'm not good enough for people to just like me for who I am. So there's something about like not everyone has to love every bit of me, and that's okay. And I can still be liked by people without them needing to see everything, and like, you know, and to feel completely seen by every single person that I come across. So I think there's a liberation in like, it's okay not to be liked by everybody. And it's lovely if you are liked by lots of people, but it's okay not to be. And that in itself is freedom, because then the people that do stay mean that much more, because they choose to be there because they like what they see. And I think the school piece is that I have to fit in with everyone, whereas actually post school it's the freedom of, I get to choose the circles that I am free in, and I get to choose the circles I'm part of, and other people get to do the same. You know, like, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay, in the same way that not everyone's going to be my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I think there's a letting go of needing to be everyone's cup of tea at all times.
Nice.
I think is the grace that I need to let go of.
Yeah, really.
No, grace I need to give myself in order to let go of the sort of need to fit in the entire time.
Yeah, well said. Well, I'm thrilled you went. I'm really pleased that you went, and it's been lovely debriefing you. And hopefully those of you that have listened to this episode, you may resonate from when you were at school. You may resonate from when you're parenting children through school. You know, so hopefully you've enjoyed listening to
There's
Amy.
Something for everyone to take away potentially.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Mama.
For showing up in the way that you did.
Yeah, no, I think it was good. And I think also thank you for, like, you know, I know we spoke about how there are some things that I wish I'd done differently, or potentially wish we'd done differently. But I think overall we did a good job. And I think you did a very good job.
Thank you. Well, I think you also did a good job. So
we're just gassing each other up at this point. We're like, oh my God, you're amazing. No, you're amazing.
Great. Well, awesome. Lovely to talk about it. Thank you for listening, everybody. We love having you join us each week, and hopefully you find these conversations interesting. And we look forward to next week.
Absolutely. See you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.